I'm back! My apologies for taking so long. It was a long trip and then I got sick and injured from the exertion. That sucked. As usual, I drowned the pools. Though I did have a noble incident where I did just barely well enough in my first Street Fighter 6 game to get randomly selected for a stream match, and only to knowingly choke badly under pressure. I was mortified, but what can you do? If I keep improving, I'll have more opportunities to learn how to deal with the spotlight. Until then, is the choking as expected. Fact is, though, the majority of my Evo was spent chasing down 3 titles in particular, one of which I've already played extensively, as my longtime followers of the channel will know. We're on the cusp of an interesting new era in the fighting game scene, one defined by major tactic fighters due to come out this or next year. Now, this doesn't include Hunter, and Impact, as sales numbers, user rates, and the general mood in the community demonstrates, the 18-led attempt at capitalizing on Hunter x Hunter's cultural relevance was badly stymied by poor marketing, poor netcode, and frankly wildly out of touch executive decisions around its general release strategy. It may actually be a frontrunner for the worst received game of the year, although I feel that may actually be a little unfair. There were a number of others that ultimately failed to deliver a game as described at all, while Impact is, at least, playable and recognizable as the advertised product. No, instead, my focus was at EVO on the new tag team era as defined by 2 hero titles and a Riot project. I am, of course, talking about 2XKO, Marvel Tokon, and Invincible Versus. Now, as mentioned, I already have a lot of experience with 2XKO in particular, having successfully applied for and gained access to both of its Alpha Lab sessions. Alpha Lab 2 in particular was controversial for any number of reasons, not just for the deliberately smaller player pool, which chafed against the desires of an innumerable number of players and arguably still strained the game's reputation to current day, but also because it was quite frankly a bad build from a player's standpoint. The defensive mechanisms introduced in AL2 made the game constantly run to time, while the combo reward system introduced poorly incentivized more aggressive play. I mentioned all of this in the 2SKO Alpha Lab 2 videos I made previously. In light of that though, I do have excellent news. The post-AL2 build introducing Vice anything but slow. It's a crisp, aggressive experience matching Vice's general strategy, while Vi herself was quite frankly a rush-down lover's delight. I need to play many more hours until I have the timing down, but the slip in for the pressure plays, plus the nasty little tricks you can pull off with microcharged inputs for extra oomph and combo potential, made for a constantly engaged style of play that successfully captures a strong sense of player agency, even as you're executing a otherwise well-trodden combo path. It also helps that you immediately see the team potential for her as well. The Smash Sisters routine with Jinx, for example, should be obvious. Grenade pop-ups and rockets make for obvious extensions in pressure plays, but literally anybody with ways to control the flow of the fight allows for smooth transitions into Vi's powerful win conditions. This is especially true for Braum. He can literally march through zoning attempts and freeze targets for quick tagging setups. But also works for Echo's Time Freeze grenades as an extension of Yasuo and Ari's witheringly dangerous neutrals, and more. I see her working less well with characters that otherwise fulfill similar roles as a rushdown or bruiser type. She really wants somebody that cheats through the neutral for her, and while the total damage potential for a partner like Darius or Ilaoi is jaw-dropping, getting both Vi and a melee partner into danger range against the likes of Ari and Jinx is inherently an uphill battle. But let's zoom out a little bit. Yes, Vi is fun, but the game's smarter than finding about ways to lay giant, oversized mecha hands on people. What we've seen from the latest Evo build is a game that's finally a bit more obvious about the direction it wants to take. If Alpha Lab 1 was a test to see how far they can push the system's envelope for aggressive play, and Alpha Lab 2 into the far opposite direction as a test for defensive systems, then the pre-closed beta build we saw at EVO marks what Riot's ultimately settled upon as the intended form for 2XKO. As this particular clip demonstrates, this means a highly stylistic, highly efficient, wall-to-wall blitz of surprisingly technical execution. While I do have some thoughts on what's gained or lost with the genre-wide obsession and adoption of simple inputs, I can at least say that a high-level 2x skill has that unspoken quality of any truly great fighting game. to make you feel and look like a skillful badass when you find an opening and pop off from your opponent, especially like they do on me right here, to my detriment. Now, Marvel Tokon contrasts with 2x KO in some downright fascinating ways, especially in the fundamentals of what the designers intend for skill expression. The most immediately obvious aspect is how secondary the tag teaming identity is with Tokon, especially at the start of the game when the assist meter has just one charge to it, forcing you to decide whether to use it as a defensive tool or to squeeze advantage out of it for an early wall break and get that second meter ASAP. That gives Marvel Tokon a truly unique pacing identity to it. So unique that it almost seems like a reverse tag fighter in some sense, as the usual cadence of swapping between characters to preserve HP, and the sense of a house of cards collapsing as character options are torn out from under the player is turned on its head. Instead, the longer a match lasts, the more a game intensifies as more options are made available to either side. Rather than a sudden quenching, a moment that a match is decisively turned around, the battle to achieve best of 3 only ever burns hotter and hotter over time. That is conceptually cool as hell, but it's also something that needs a lot more than the 15-minute intervals they give us at EVO to really grasp and evaluate. What's immediately obvious is that going into Marvel Tokon with an MVC mindset will do you no favors. The fundamental assumptions about how to seize and maintain an advantage, how to juggle resources, and how to balance game time between your chosen cast of heroes, basically damn near the entirety of what makes the Marvel spirit what it is, all gotta go. Instead, you're gunning for things like wall splash versus wall breaks, for building assist meter over knockout damage, and very likely finding yourself playing Tokon as if it was a single player 2D fighter with a few assist wrinkles instead of what we consider traditional tag. That won't necessarily be the optimal way to play Tokon. BB tag style sandwiching setups are going to be a crucial element of high level play, but the difference between optimal and good enough in Marvel Tokon seems like it'd be smaller than it would be under traditional or more orthodox tag fighter systems. The hard limits imposed by the assist meter rather drastically cuts short of the degenerate nonsense you otherwise be able to get away with, as does the inherent nature of a game with wall break systems at all. As naturally advantageous as it is to have more assist meter than your opponent does, the assist system inherently favors defensive utility. Using assist to break an opponent's advantage turns a disadvantageous state into a neutral one at worst, while potentially costing them the same resources in the process as they burn their assist meter to try to catch back up. I suspect that if you don't like the Arxis flavored wildness in your fighting games, you're not going to enjoy Tokon too much either, but that's great news for me, because Arxis nonsense is literally what made me plug in close to like 1,000 hours into fighting games at this point, and the wrinkles that the Tokon formula adds to that tickles my interest just fine. But conversely, Arxis nonsense is a very different theme from Marvel vs. Capcom degeneracy, and I suspect that as excited as the scene is for the title right now, it will gain a sizable body of detractors for how far it deviates from their decades-old expectations. If you're upset by all the screwy nonsense that the previous titles are up to in an attempt to redefine the tag fighter subgenre, take heed of Invincible Versus. While I won't be able to speak much about it authoritatively, the Killer Instinct in Mortal Kombat school of fighting games it derives from isn't to my personal tastes, and so I'm less able to speak on how it plays in general. The overall structure of it is at least resoundingly familiar. Now, don't get misled by the earlier controversies about simple inputs or similar. Not that Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was fundamentally all that complicated in the control side of things either, when you get right down to it. The fact is that developers are adding traditional control elements to popular demand also makes it a moot point. Rather, this is about as traditional as you can get in terms of meter, HP, and team management, and the general flow of ground to air to ground to special routing. That the bodies of your opposition will on occasion explode into wet slimy bits when you hit them hard enough isn't quite infancy kosher, but if you're an Invincible fan in the first place, the gore is simply expected. I will, however, say that the Killer Instinct-inspired flow of the game isn't the only reason why I'm kind of just whatever on this title. As interesting as the story is for Invincible, the skin-tight jumpsuit costumes make for the worst overall aesthetics of the titles in contention. Though it's not visually simplified to the point of being confusing, it is simplified to the point of being kind of lackluster, at least to my personal tastes. This isn't just a matter of the costumes at play, though that's not an insignificant part of it. but also how the game as a whole is visually designed, sharing a commonality with Mortal Kombat's generally rigid keyframing and animation pacing that plays a big role in turning me off that particular branch of the fighting game family in the first place. Some of it is just inherent to the franchise and outside of Skybound's immediate control, but for instance, as conceptually interesting as Atom Eve's powers are, the fact that it's restricted to making colorful pink 2D shapes is a core problem with their execution in both the comics, show, and now game. Yet that still leaves her as one of the most visually interesting in execution. In contrast, Battle Beast is perhaps the most visually distinct silhouette of the cast, hard not to be when as the only line-headed semi-humanoid. But when combat in the franchise is basically baseline on whoever can crush the other person's skull hardest and quickest, there's only so much you can do to differentiate the underlying ethos of Battle Beast's movesets from a similar brawler like Mark. Now, to cut off the obvious reactionary response to this, yes, it's obvious who's doing what and how they're doing it. What I'm saying isn't that the moves are identical, but that the style and intention of their kits are basically drawing from the same general school of play. When playing the like Zoners and Strive, for instance, there's a massive and obvious difference between Venom and Dizzy and Axel. They might all use projectiles or long-range neutrals to control the zone of interaction, but how and why they do so are incomparable as to make it difficult to translate the nuances of one to the other, and as are the execution of their respective win conditions. In contrast, the Invincible versus win cons for any of their close-up fighters are largely the same, even how they route into launchers for combo extensions and utilize assists and tag-ins for their general game plan. Now, this isn't a uniquely Invincible problem by any means. Shoto Fighter 6 shares similar issues in trying to make sure that everybody has a line of play in every possible scenario, and thus emerges as having similar overall kits. But in Street Fighter's case, the fact that it's a traditional 1v1 fighter actually works in its favor, as the greater depth and wider movesets allows its characters means that there is absolutely no confusing Ryu with My Kitwise, even if you modded the graphics so that they otherwise share the same exact model. On the flip side, the fact that Invincible is a tag fighter is what makes its relatively shallow pool of combat philosophies, at least in the demo, especially noticeable and problematic. As so much of the game's skill expression is going to get tied into its tag mechanics, that means less overall space for the individual character kits to breathe or have opportunities to stand out. But Tag Fighter, where half of the cast is interchangeable with each other as either leads or system functions, is a comparatively poor one. I hope it's something that the Skybound team is able to rectify as we near its release. As for my own plans with their imminent releases, it should probably come as no surprise that I have many plans surrounding 2XKO in particular, and fully intend to stream, create content, rank up, and compete in it as much as I can. My history with Riot's competitive scene is a mixed bag, but with 2XKO specifically and the talents behind its development, are folks that can be trusted to have good intentions with the product. Tokon I'm excited for as well, as you can probably tell, as I've generally had good history getting into Arx's titles. My only problem is that adding both 2XKO and Tokon to my rotation brings me up to 4 mainline games to focus on, the aforementioned Tag Fighters, as well as Strive and Street Fighter 6, meaning that if I intend to follow through with my plans to be more invested in the local FGC and compete, I'm going to have to prioritize accordingly. But that's a problem for future me. As I work out which titles and which competitive scenes are most personally rewarding from season to season, and it is, to be fair, a highly luxurious problem to have. 2025 was a bit of a rough year for fighting game fans in general, even as we're in the midst of a genre renaissance. Poor patches and system mechanics designed to appeal outside of the core player base has made for a rather contentious time in history for the FGC. But call me a damn optimist if you must, I don't think these issues are anything but growing pains for the new era. Patches come and go, but how the games are used as scaffolding for the community is what's really important. The storylines getting built around our titles are hands down amazing, from New Blood Princess rising from obscurity like Blaz and other Ryu specialists coming in during their high school eras to take names and seize crowns, to the old guards like Justin Wong proving that old men still have fresh lessons to teach, to the increasing number of serious women contenders like Momoi Runa aka Betty-chan, now actively celebrating among what is still a predominantly male space. We have the likes of Sage of Slam dragging in competitors and fellow YouTubers, Crazy Raccoon leading efforts in Japan, and Hall Life idols regularly throwing down in ranked. It's nice. I like this. I, for one, can't wait to see what the next year and its tag titles bring to the mix. And there will be mixes.